gentlemen, please welcome to the podium Tommy Maddox and Freddie Martin.
I usually don't talk when Freddie's involved. I'm Tommy Maddox. I used to play a horn a million years ago, for those who don't know who I am. And looking at the list tonight, I'd like to congratulate everybody who's, you call them an inductee, is that?
Right, that's the
All
phrase.
you inductees, congratulations to each one of you. And with the exception of Martha and George, I think they either marched with you, taught marching to you, taught with you, showered with you, or worked in some other fashion. Now, Cole Healy's looking at Sheriff like, what? But I'm here to talk about Paul Milano. Paul came after our first season, which, if you didn't know, that was 1977. And 1978, we kind of decided we were going to be competitive. So we got us a horn guy, Jim Ott, we got us a drum guy, Tom Float, and we needed an organizational guy, which would be Paul Milano. He was out of the Cavalier organization. And back then, the pecking order for the Cavies, drum major ran everything, and then the next cool guy in line would be anybody that was in the snare line. Well, Paul was a snare in the Cavaliers, and that used to be a real big deal back then. Well, he came to us, and there I was, a bright-eyed 18-year-old boy, and here's some dude from the north, which, you know, I'm from the south, and we just don't gee-haw very well. But Paul and I grew to really respect one another. We love one another. And I think the last time I was standing in front of you all, I talked about love, and how love just permeates our relationships with one another. Well, Paul excels with nonprofit organizations and fundraising. And at the moment Paul came to our corps, we were actually a money-making machine, because we had a TV station pumping money into us like nobody else. We were the only drum corps on the road where everybody gained weight during the summer. And it was really something else. So for 2 years, Paul got to run the operations with Channel 11's backing, and then all of a sudden he received the baptism of what it's like to operate a nonprofit that truly is nonprofit, because Channel 11 pulled our funding, and there we were, like geese in a new world. Well, and then it fell upon the shoulders of Paul, and Freddie's going to speak to this, I believe, to keep us from going under. And he did a lot of things in the background that nobody really knows. I've been afraid to ask him, even though I've been his lawyer at one point in time or another. And some things you just don't want to know. But this organization would not be here were it not for Paul Milano. And I'm proud to call him my friend. I'm proud that he's inducted into the Hall of Fame where he belongs. And Freddie, where are you? Do you want to?
I'm around here.
Oh, he's always working. I'm going to give you Freddie.
Okay, you finish this one.
Okay.
Yeah, Paul came to us because of one of the three founders, Bob Hayne, who was close friends with Linda and me. The three of us founded the Corps. And when it became obvious that we needed more organizational help, Bob said, the guy that assisted me at Cavaliers is Paul Milano, and he's perfect for what we want to do. So we contacted Paul, he came to Atlanta, and wow, he did exactly what we had hoped. Paul was not always subtle with the members, but he was always specific, you'd have to admit. But I have to say in closing that Paul is truly the only male staff member who ever got a Mother's Day card from the brass line. So, Paul, thank you. You're amazing, and we love you.
Paul Milano.
No, you talk.
Michael Dugan, right?
Tommy's gonna stand here because anyone who knows me knows I get emotional with these things. And so if there's a long pause, he's just gonna come over and take my notes and finish up. So thank you for Tommy. Thank you, Tommy, for reading the prepared remarks I sent you. But seriously, back in the day, you especially, as well as Mark Wisnant and Tracy Morris, helped me learn in very different ways how to relate to the members of Spirit for the better. I owe each of you a debt of gratitude. My congratulations and respect to the rest of the Hall of Fame inductees tonight. Thanks also to the Hall of Fame committee, particularly Gary Hood, who helped nominate me, and Freddie Martin, who probably pushed it through. It is quite sincerely unexpected, and I will try to explain that. I first became aware of Spirit of Atlanta in the summer of '77. I had helped form the new senior corps in Chicago that year. We sponsored the Wheeling, Illinois contest, which coincidentally became Spirit's first show. Little did I know that a few months later, Bob Hayne, Spirit's first corps director, would ask me to come down from Chicago to help with the corps' second season. Bob and I had been good friends since my marching days in the Cavaliers while he was the corps director. And so Bob's here with me tonight. So I arrived in the fall of 1977, having just turned 24 years old. I really had not had an adult job prior to coming down to Spirit of Atlanta. I was just starting my young adult life. I had no real knowledge of what I had agreed to do. I became the corps' finance, operations, and tour manager. Bob more or less retired, but he mentored me that first year. I was surprised, however, to find out that no one other than Bob knew I was even coming. But I was doubly shocked to find out that although Bob had the title of corps director, Freddie Martin actually ran the organization. Linda Martin politely told me after our first meeting with her that she and Freddie were still debating whether or not there was a job here for me. I had quit my job in Chicago, so I was anxious. Thank you, Freddie and Linda, for letting me stay and for ultimately becoming an older brother and sister to me. I was very naive in those days, so I tried to mask it with bravado, which is probably better described as a combination of arrogance and crassness. My predisposition back then was to see the world and most decisions as either black or white. I was too afraid to gamble with nuances, and that put me at cross purposes with most everyone. I won few friends early on and never felt that I fit in like as a Yankee in the South, something I always regretted. I stayed as corps manager until leaving in the early fall of 1980. They were, quite honestly, 3 very difficult years. I probably learned more about myself and the world in general during that time than any other brief period in my life. That was mainly a benefit, and I am forever grateful for that experience all in all. But constantly feeling that I was in over my head with the responsibilities of running most of the corps, except for the important creative performance aspects, of course, and dealing with the overnight loss of our TV station sponsor as a sole source of any real revenue, then the difficult task of figuring out how to run a bingo operation to keep us afloat, finally having to manage all the painful aspects of the aftermath of Jim Ott's death. Just all became too much for my young self. My underperformance during those years, despite some helpful things I know I was able to accomplish, made my being here this evening all the more unlikely. I suspect some combination of forgetfulness and forgiveness on your part granted me this award tonight. Happily, my later involvement with Spirit was much more on the positive side for me, and I hope for the Corps as well. While Spirit's alums and friends were rallying to get the Corps through the summer of 2000, after the previous Corps director had abandoned them on short notice that spring, Steve Sorrell, Alan Armstrong, and Freddie Martin contacted me for help with a proposed merger of sorts with Jack State University. They were aware that my career was now that of a nonprofit fundraising vice president working for Reinhardt University. I had probably only seen 1 or 2 drum corps shows in the 20 years after I left Spirit. I thought I was done with drum corps. But after promising my children and my somewhat perturbed wife that I would only attend 3 meetings, I wound up being vice chairman of the board of directors for 3 years. There were many competent people on the board, so I don't know how much I actually added, but it was rewarding for me, especially getting to know the kids from my early Spirit days, all grown up as wonderful adults and serving on the board of directors with me. By the way, a few years later, my perturbed wife became my ex-wife, which was a good thing, so thanks for helping me. Then roughly 15 more years passed, and yet another phone call from a Spirit of alum, this time Susan Bailey. A group of people felt that the then chairwoman of the Board of Spirit needed some advice that she was unwilling to take from them. I had moved back to Chicago, and since they were going to be in Chicago for a DCI meeting, at which I was going to be doing a seminar for the DCI board about board leadership, they asked if I would talk with the chairwoman there. So I met with her and the other Spirit leadership folks, and then continued to speak with her over the course of the next several months. I concluded, as everyone did, that she would best serve Spirit by relinquishing her almost complete control of the organization. My being a Sicilian from Chicago, we made her an offer she couldn't refuse. That paved the way for Jeff Nelson and his exceptional cast of new leadership, who rejuvenated Spirit again. I mention this most recent aspect of my involvement with Spirit primarily to highlight that Spirit, like other drum corps, has had to survive several times. And I honestly can't think of any other corps with such fortitude and such love from its alums, staff, and supporters. In closing, I truly believe that you have all forgotten or forgiven my past transgressions, and for that I will always be grateful. My unfortunate combination of naivete and arrogance almost ended my association with Spirit as soon as it began. I am no longer naive, though the arrogance is permanent, I am afraid. But thankfully, people like Freddie and Linda, Tommy Maddox, Mark Wisden, Randy Wickstrom, who I just went up and saw in Detroit, he says hello to everyone, Tracy and Ann Morris, Jim Clark, Mike Morris, Susan Bailey, Bob Schruffler, Jeff and Judy Nelson, Al Murray, the late Jerry McKeever and Tom Float, and many other good people, all did become lifelong friends. That is the most precious gift for me. All I ever wanted to do for Spirit was to help the Corps members navigate the difficult years of young adulthood. My childhood and young adulthood were painfully difficult. I did not want that for others. My drum corps marching years helped me survive. I think I was able to help a few of you. Yep. That alone made all my time with Spirit worthwhile. And now, I finally feel that I fully belong to the Spirit of Atlanta family.